At the beginning of the movie, a man named Neil visits an old man named Owen Lark at his pub. Neil requests to meet someone, but Owen tells him to leave and take his grief elsewhere. Neil insists that he is looking for answers, but Owen remains firm and tells him to go home. Later, Owen records a video message for his daughter, revealing that the property comes with a special tenant who lives in the basement. This tenant is bound to the property, and now that his daughter's name is on the title deeds, she has become the guardian and cannot escape this responsibility. Owen emphasizes that she is the one barrier between the tenant and the outside world, and her sole task is not to let the tenant out of the basement because she is very dangerous. Owen concludes by saying that tonight, the curse ends with him. However, his plan backfires and he accidentally sets himself on fire, ultimately succumbing to the flames and dying. Next, we see Iris and her friend Katie together when Katie receives a phone call informing her about her dad's demise. Iris reaches the hospital where she encounters the solicitor acting on behalf of her father's estate. He tells her that he can review his assets with her once they have liquidated the property. Iris is shocked to see the place her dad owned. The solicitor reassures her, explaining that she need not worry. Once she signs over permission for him to act as executor, he can handle the sale and transition of ownership. As they enter the pub, the solicitor tells Iris that numerous owners have made various attempts to reinvent the place over the past 400 years. He explains that her father was so deep in debt that selling the pub for a profit would be financially impossible, and a full restoration would require a significant financial investment. Iris goes to her father's room and finds his belongings half-packed. She asks the solicitor if her father was planning to leave, to which he replies that he has no record of any attempt to put the property on the market. Iris decides to stay at the property for the night, and as she tries to sleep, she is suddenly jolted awake by the sound of an alarm. Frightened, she hurries downstairs and approaches a door, but finds it locked. When she tries to listen closely, she senses someone else is in the house. As she steps out to investigate, she is abruptly startled by Neil, who quickly tries to reassure her that he didn't mean to frighten her. He introduces himself and states that he needs to see her. Iris responds that she doesn't know what he's talking about, to which he offers her cash, prompting her to ask, "What exactly is this for?" He explains it's for the woman in the basement and pleads to see his wife. Iris tells him his wife isn't there, but he insists she is downstairs, offers more cash, and promises to bring the rest tomorrow. Iris says she doesn't have the key at the moment and asks him to return the following night, to which he agrees and departs. The next day, Iris meets with the solicitor and tells him that she isn't ready to sell her dad's pub yet, as she wants to spend a little more time there. He hands her the papers and the keys, also tells her that her dad left instructions for the new owner. Later that evening, Katie arrives and Iris tells her that it's her pub for the time being, and that she can sell it whenever she wants. When Katie asks why, Iris explains about the man who is willing to pay to go into the basement. She mentions that many people used to come and pay her dad just to go down there and get a bit of a scare. When Neil arrives that night, all three of them head to the basement, where 2 chairs are placed in the center. Neil approaches a broken wall and calls out, "If she is in there, come out." Iris then says, "Come out wherever you are." After a while, they hear growls and see a figure emerging from the broken wall. Frightened, Katie asks Iris to leave, but the entity comes out, and Neil insists they need its help. He explains that his wife died last year and he needs to speak to her. The entity doesn't listen to him and begins approaching Iris. However, when Iris commands it to stop and not touch her, the entity complies. Neil realizes that the entity obeys Iris and asks her to tell it to sit in the chair. Iris declares that the price just doubled, and when he agrees, she instructs the entity to sit in the chair. The entity sits on the chair, and Neil tells it that he wants to talk to his wife. The entity extends its hand toward him, and Neil hands it one of his wife's rings. When the entity starts to eat the ring, Iris asks Neil what is happening, to which he admits that he is doing this for the first time. He then gets up and straps the entity into the chair, but suddenly the entity screams, due to which they all become frightened and are shocked to see the entity transforming into a human. Neil initially thinks the entity has taken the form of his wife, Sarah, but when he removes the bag from its head, he is shocked to see his mother, Regina, instead. Regina asks if they can loosen the straps, to which Neil responds that she has been dead for 20 years. Regina says she doesn't want to be dead, prompting Neil to ask why she did it to herself. He recounts how he found her face down in the bathtub and expresses that he doesn't want to talk to her, but wants to know why she did it if she's here. Regina begins crying, and water starts coming out from the broken wall. She then transforms into a demonic figure and tells Neil that she never wanted to be a mother, and that every second of every day felt like a little death, which eventually accumulated. She adds, "He never wanted to kiss her when he was little, but now he is grown and owes your mother a kiss." She then extends her neck to kiss him. Seeing this, they all become frightened and step back and get shocked to find that the entity has disappeared from there. As they look around, the entity suddenly attacks Neil, demanding a kiss, and a torrent of water starts flowing from its mouth. Iris commands the entity to stop and quickly picks up the bag, throwing it over the entity's head, allowing Neil to free himself from its grip. The entity then spits out the ring, and Iris commands it to get back to the broken wall. As they emerge from the basement, Neil explains the ring belonged to his mother before he gave it to Sarah, which might have confused the entity. He mentions there was a timer and rules, and the encounter was supposed to last only 2 minutes. Iris tells Neil his wife is dead and he can't see her anymore. Neil hands Iris his address, pleading for a chance to say goodbye in case she changes her mind. Later, Iris and Katie watch the tape and learn that by signing the title deed, Iris has become tied to the entity in the basement. She is now its guardian, and the entity will only obey her. Owen explains that the entity cannot harm her as long as she stays on her side, so she must stay away from the hole. The entity has the power to bring back the dead, but he warns her not to use this power. She only allows 2 minutes with the dead before she takes control, and no chains or straps can hold her down. The longer someone interacts with her, the stronger she becomes, eventually crawling inside their mind. Even if one tries to leave, sickness and death will follow. One way or another, she will bring one back, desperate to be set free, so Iris must not let the entity out of the basement. Katie asks why there's a woman in the basement and how long she has been down there, to which Iris responds that she doesn't know. Katie suggests they leave, but Iris explains that she doesn't have anywhere else to go. She points out that Neil is rich and willing to pay whatever it takes, and now they know the rules and what they are dealing with. She believes this could change their lives for the better. Katie reminds what her dad said, but Iris insists they can handle it for a couple of days, and reassures Katie that she is not like her dad. They decide to do it just once more and then leave. They enter the basement and mark a step, and then Iris tells the entity that she is the owner now, and it cannot leave the basement. The next day, Iris visits the address given by Neil, and meanwhile, Katie discovers a photo in the pub with the name Otto Vogler behind it. She checks the deed and learns that he was once the owner. Researching further, she finds that Otto took his own life after a family tragedy. Suddenly, the ghost of Otto startles her, but as she grabs a cane to defend herself, it disappears. Later that night, they again attempt to communicate with Neil's wife, Sarah, but this time they follow the rules. Iris sets the timer for 2 minutes, and when Neil removes the bag, he finds Sarah. Sarah doesn't realize that she's dead and asks him what's happening, to which Neil explains that she was in an accident and died. When she asks why she is strapped, he can't bring himself to explain. Instead, he asks her about the man she was seeing, but Sarah insists she doesn't know what he's talking about. Iris reminds Neil that the time is over, but he continues to press Sarah about the man. Suddenly, Sarah's demeanor changes, and she confesses that she simply couldn't bear to be with him any longer. As Iris tries to put the bag back on her head, Sarah slips away, and a car comes from behind and hits her. After a while, they find Sarah sitting in a corner, expressing that she doesn't want to be dead. Iris approaches her carefully, assuring her that she's there to help. But before Iris can put the bag back on Sarah's head, the entity in its demonic form turns towards her and quickly covers her mouth with its hand. After a moment, the entity gets up and begins leaving, and when Iris tells her that it has to listen to her, the entity reveals that they are both prisoners. Later, Iris confronts Neil, who asks her if someone she loved was going to leave her. Wouldn't she want to know why? He argues that Sarah spoke after the timer had finished, but Katie interjects, stating that he had his chance and tells him to leave. Later, Iris sees her dad's reflection and, thinking it's the entity, declares she's not scared. A demonic hand then touches her, transporting her to the day her dad died. She witnesses him talking to his wife, expressing his intention to visit Iris and explain things to her. He then begins coughing, and the alarm goes off. Owen bids goodbye to his wife and starts to leave, but the entity interjects, reminding him of what happened the last time he tried to leave. He came back to her and his curse came with him. The entity pleads for him to set it free so everything can end, but he responds by picking up alcohol bottles, determined to end it once and for all. The entity asserts that he can't kill it, but he retorts that Iris might not want to see him. But he's certain of one thing: he will burn the place to the ground, leaving nothing for anyone to inherit. As the room plunges into darkness, Owen lights a lighter. However, before he can take any action, the entity touches him, and Owen himself burns to death in the ensuing fire. Later that night, Iris wakes up to the sound of her dad calling her name. She searches for Katie in her room, but finds it empty. Confused, she descends downstairs and hears her dad's voice urging her to burn it to kill it. Rushing to the basement in search of Katie, Iris encounters her dad, who warns her that she doesn't belong there and implores her to run away. He then begins approaching the hole, and when she tries to stop him, he tells her that she was never up to this challenge, and that it can sense her fear. And then, to Iris's horror, her dad begins to peel the skin from his face. As he continues, ripping off his entire head, Iris realizes that it's the entity in disguise. She demands to know what it has done to her dad, but she finds herself choking. Struggling, Iris removes the mask, only to discover herself frozen, facing her own reflection. Suddenly, Iris wakes up from her sleep in a panic and rushes to the bathroom. However, Katie arrives just in time and cut the thread on her neck that was choking her. Later, they visit the solicitor's office, but Iris is shocked to find it empty. Upon returning, Iris confirms that the solicitor is the one on the left in the photo, and Katie comments that it's as if he knew and just needed someone to put their name on the line before disappearing. Katie suggests they take the money from Neil and leave, and as they discuss their plans, the entity is shown overhearing them from the basement. Iris refuses to leave it all behind, to which Katie tries to explain that it's the entity in her head. Katie tells her that she should be scared, to which Iris responds that she is truly afraid of returning to her ordinary life, where she has nothing. Iris suggests that maybe Katie doesn't want her to have this, because as long as she is struggling, Katie gets to take care of her. But as soon as she has something for herself, Katie just wants to take it away. Hearing all this, Katie becomes upset and decides to leave Iris, walking away from the situation. Katie decides to visit the address behind that photo, where she finds some photos and newspaper clippings on a wall, and she realizes that Otto tried to escape. Meanwhile, Iris goes to the basement and uses the entity to communicate with her dad. She tells him that she owns his pub, to which he responds that it's not possible because he burned the place to the ground. Iris asks him about the entity, but he says he doesn't know much about it because he never questioned who it was or how it came to be. He explains that he didn't want her involved, to which she replies that she would have stayed away if he had spoken to her. He admits that he tried to see her once a long time ago, but as soon as he left the pub, horrible things followed him. She then says she just wants to know how she can control the entity, believing that as the guardian, it has to listen to her. Owen warns her that until it gets inside her head, the real question is who is listening to whom. Iris says she is going to sell the place and be gone before anything like that happens to her, but Owen replies that as long as her name is on the deed, she can't escape it, control it, or kill it, and all she can do is not use it. Just then, the alarm goes off, and the entity asks if she has ever stopped to think that maybe it is not her curse, but that she is its curse. It then begins burning, and as Iris tries to put the bag on its head, her dad stops her and says goodbye. He tells her that he failed her and everyone he ever loved, asks for forgiveness, and tells her not to bring him back. Then Iris puts the bag on its head. Iris comes out and sets the deed on fire, but she is shocked to see that it's not burning. Later, Katie returns to the pub and begins looking for Iris, but we see Iris lying unconscious in a room. Katie then goes to the basement in search of Iris, where she finds a watch lying on the floor, and as she bends down to pick it up, the entity appears behind her. The entity eats a piece of paper, and when Katie tries to escape, the entity stops her. Katie is shocked to see that it has transformed into Otto, who asks why she brought him back. She asks if he can help her to find the man in charge so they can get out of this, to which Otto explains that her fate was sealed 400 years ago when an ancient brotherhood discovered a woman who could conjure the dead. The brotherhood tried to exploit her power, but when she refused, they branded her a witch and burned her at the stake. However, death could not hold her. Rising from the dead, she sought ruthless vengeance. Disease spread among livestock, crops shriveled, and the plague afflicted the people. To stop her, the Brotherhood performed a dark ritual, imprisoning her in an underground tomb where she was left alone and nearly forgotten. Centuries later, the descendants of the Brotherhood opened her tomb to exploit her power again. The more they used her, the more power she gained over them, leading to their sickness and death. Now, only one guardian stands between her and the outside world. The person who signs the deed inherits the curse and must prevent her from unleashing her revenge. Katie says her friend never meant to come to this place and that she inherited it. Otto asks if she is not the gatekeeper, and then he approaches her, saying sorry to her, and the door slams shut. The next day, when Iris wakes up, she receives a call from Katie, who asks for her help and tells her that she is in the basement. Iris hurries to the basement in search of Katie, where she hears her voice emanating from within the hole. Equipping herself with a lantern, Iris is poised to enter, but a recollection of her father's warning against the hole momentarily halts her. Nonetheless, driven by the urgency to rescue her friend, Iris ventures into the depths. Guided by Katie's voice, she proceeds along the tunnel-like path, until eventually, she discovers Katie unharmed. Iris begins to lead her friend back toward safety, but their progress is abruptly interrupted by the sight of a lifeless body, shockingly revealed to be Katie's. The entity vanishes from sight, only to reappear moments later in a horrifying guise, prompting Iris to flee for her life. Iris manages to escape the confines of the hole, where Neil rushes to her help and swiftly guides her out of the basement. Later, she confides in Neil, revealing that her dad told her he died knowing he had failed everyone he loved, and she hated him for it, but she has done the same thing. She declares that this cycle ends with her now. They will seal it forever, so no one will use it again, and it will be powerless. That night, Iris overhears Neil talking to the entity, assuring it that he can keep it safe, and that all he wants is to see Sarah whenever he chooses. He signs the deed and shows it to the entity, but as it looks up, his name disappears. The entity then transforms into Sarah and reveals that she remembers what happened that night. They fought over dinner, and she expressed her need for more space and time to think, but he was calm. It's then unveiled that he had mixed something in her drink to make her sleep until they could talk. Neil says he wanted them to spend their lives together, and she was just gonna abandon him just like his mother. Sarah reveals that she was pregnant with him and confesses she was afraid of him and raising their child in that environment. She suggests they can still be together, but not if Iris remains the keeper, explaining they can't form a family with Iris alive. He protests that he's not a murderer, but she accuses him of killing her and their child. She questions what he thinks Iris will say when she discovers the truth. Neil realizes Iris has overheard them and rushes after her, and as he attempts to harm her, she insists that the entity isn't Sarah and he needs to let go. Iris manages to free herself and attempts to escape through the roof, but Neil follows her there and hurls her off the roof, resulting in her demise. He then brings her lifeless body back to the basement and informs the entity that he has fulfilled its request, requesting it to bring Iris back so she can add his name to the deed. The entity consumes Iris's phone, and when Neil removes the mask, he discovers Iris there. He expresses remorse, stating he didn't intend for this outcome, and looking at her dead body, Iris realizes that Neil killed her. He asks her to explain how he can get his name on the deed, but the entity informs him that its guardian is dead, and he is the one who brought her back. Approaching him, Iris declares that her name remains on the deed, making her still its master. And now, they are the same. The lights in the basement suddenly go off, and he is dragged toward the hole. Then, his mother's ghost approaches and breaks his hands. Following this, Sarah comes forward and forcefully bangs his head on the floor. Finally, Iris approaches and ultimately kills him by smashing a chair on his head. Now, as Iris walks towards the basement exit, the deed spontaneously ignites and burns on its own. And as she exits the pub, it too bursts into flames, and the movie ends here. Thanks for facing the frights with us. If you survived this video, drop a like, summon that subscribe button, and brace yourself for more horror. Until next time, stay spooked.